Hello, my name is Suki and I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today in the special programming on Channel Punjabi and Global Punjab. We're very pleased to have in the studio today with us again for the second time, the Honourable Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship for the Government of Canada, the Honourable Ahmed Hussein. So please join in welcoming me today with some updates, and we're going to be discussing some programs and some incentives about, that they've got in the works. So let's welcome Honourable Ahmed Hussein. How are you?
Good, very good. Thank you for having me back again.
Thank you for joining us. Let's talk more about updates. According to the United Nations report, estimates the number of refugees worldwide is estimated at 26 million.
Yes.
And although Canada can't resettle all of them, I know you're very passionate about seeing Canada welcoming more refugees through specific programs, as part of the economic and immigration program. So tell us more about your vision that you have.
Well, I think that Canada is already doing a good job at leading the world in terms of having a humanitarian program within the larger immigration program. We have, as a country, as a government, we have responded to the needs of Canadians to be generous towards refugees, especially the private sponsorship. A lot of people don't know this, but over 2 million Canadians have personally sponsored a refugee over the last 40 years.
Wow,
so
those are big numbers.
No country comes close to that. So we're a very generous country, we're a very compassionate country. But I feel that, as you said, Canada cannot take everyone, but Canada also needs to do its part as a global, as a member of the international community, to do its part to share in the responsibility of resettlement of refugees. And I think we're doing a good job. In addition to that, I think that it's important not to lose sight of the fact that even though the largest share of our immigration to Canada is in the economic category, where people are coming to fill unfilled jobs and to bring much needed skills that create jobs for Canadians. The second largest category is family reunification. And then after that, we have some space for refugees. It's very important that we keep that up, because it's also part of who we are as a country. It's part of our tradition. We've always welcomed people who have fled persecution. And when in the few instances where we have abandoned our humanitarian principles, we have learned that those people deserve protection. And in hindsight, we have collectively as Canadians apologized for those mistakes. So it's important for us to continue that tradition, because being part of being a country that welcomes others, including refugees, is also in our economic self-interest, because a lot of people will choose Canada to come and start a new life and contribute to our country because of our welcoming nature. Now is not the time to close our doors.
Indeed.
Now is the time to build bridges with other countries, open markets to Canadian exporters, and bring in much needed talent. Because I can tell you that when you get talent to Canada, investment follows that talent. So our ambitious immigration programs deliver that. And fortunately for the last many years, immigration was a consensus issue. All parties agreed that immigration is a great tool to grow the economy. Unfortunately, over the last 4 years, the Conservatives have spent a lot of time and energy demonizing asylum seekers and calling them names and conflating asylum seeker pressures with the immigration system, saying to people that these people are taking the space of others in the regular immigration system, knowing full well that asylum seekers are processed separately in the Immigration Refugee Board. We have delivered a program and funding as part of Budget 2019 to finally fund the asylum system for the amount and the volumes of asylum seekers that we receive in Canada. The Conservatives left a broken asylum system, but they didn't really do much for family reunification either. So it's very ironic that now they're trying to blame their record on family reunification on asylum seekers. So what we have to do is say to Canadians that we can do both. We can be a compassionate country, but at the same time do a good job at welcoming talent and welcoming workers to fill our jobs and fill unfilled jobs. Of course, the first priority is Canadians, but there are jobs and industries and sectors in our economy that are running short of workers.
They're lacking.
They're lacking workers. So we have to respond to that need. Otherwise, those businesses, if they can't find the workers here, they'll go somewhere else. We also have to bring talent that creates jobs. And we have to do a better job at family reunification. So our government has done all of the above. And our record speaks for itself. When you look at what the Conservatives are now saying about immigration, I suspect they'll cut the numbers. And I say that because Andrew Scheer talked about, when he was asked, are you going to keep the numbers that the Liberals have established? He's saying, you know, he's hearing people tell him to cut the numbers and others telling him to increase the numbers. I don't know who's telling him to cut the numbers, because everywhere that you go in Canada, employers will tell you that they need more, not less.
Yeah, there's a demand.
So because we have 40-year unemployment lows.
Right.
We have over 1 million jobs created. We have a good economic growth. So a lot of employers are actually short of workers. So now is not the time to cut immigration levels. And so I don't know who's telling him to cut those numbers. And I suspect if they get into office, we'll go back to 7 to 8 year wait times in family reunification, because that's what they had.
Yeah.
That's what they had. And for 2 years, you couldn't even sponsor your parents and grandparents under the Harper Conservatives. So they have a terrible record. We've cleaned up the mess that they left us. A lot of the backlogs are done. The wait times have come down. And we're delivering new economic immigration programs, which I can happily talk about very quickly. One is rural immigration program, which we just announced.
Yes.
And BC is well represented. 2 communities were selected in BC.
Right, there were 5 territories.
We selected 11 communities.
Okay.
There were 50 applications. It was actually, the response was overwhelming.
Wow.
And we could only select 11 because the nature of immigration pilot programs, there's a cap on the number. So, but it's a good start.
Right.
And this came about because I traveled from coast to coast to coast, myself and the Minister of Employment, Labour and Workforce Development. We both heard about the severe worker shortages, not just in the big cities, but also in the rural areas. Businesses there are growing, and they need people. They need workers, they need talent, they need skills to grow the economy. And they were pleading with us to deliver more. And so the Rural Immigration Pilot Program is one of the ways to respond to that. 11 communities across Canada were selected. 2 are in British Columbia. One is the West Kootenay region. So the entire region had 1 application. So that's great.
Yes.
And the second one is Vernon. Vernon, British Columbia. So those 2 have been selected. The other program that's working really well to respond to the labor market need is the Atlantic Immigration Pilot Program. And by the way, for both these programs, they can be used for any skill level. You could use it for low-skilled labor, intermediate skilled labor, and highly skilled labor. It's really up to the employers to select who they want.
So the qualifications for applicants are vary of levels. So
yes,
okay.
Because it's based on the employers. So the employers go out there and they recruit who they need for their local employment, regional labor market needs. And we do the processing of the applications.
Right.
And it's not a temporary foreign worker program. It's a program for permanent residency, under 6-month processing, and it includes the family members.
Wow.
So it's a way to not only attract skilled workers to rural Canada, it's also keeping them there.
Keeping them here.
So if you look at Nova Scotia, for example, they had 60% retention rate for their skilled workers before the introduction of the Atlantic program, whereas Ontario and Alberta and BC and other provinces had very high retention rates. But Nova Scotia couldn't hang on to these people. With the introduction of the Atlantic pilot program and the focus on PR as well as the families, their retention rate is over 90% now.
Wow.
In just over 3 years. So it's working.
Right.
So, and the lessons we've learned from the Atlantic program, which we introduced 3 years ago, is now what we have used for the new rural program for the rest of the country. Finally, there's in the budget there was an announcement of a new agri-food a pilot program for non-seasonal agricultural workers, meat cutting industry, and butchers. Those three categories have been identified as having severe worker shortages. Like we're talking about in the meat cutting industry, they're already short 12% of workers. At a time when we want to increase our meat exports, how will you do that when you're already at -12? So this again, permanent residency includes the family and will be available to employers across Canada. We've increased the provincial nominee program spaces by 33%. So British Columbia is very happy with that, as are other provinces. And I met my counterpart yesterday, Bruce Ralston, and I must say, I found my British Columbia to be a great partner with us on all the opportunities of using immigration and spreading the benefits of immigration into rural British Columbia. And some of the things that the BC government is doing, we're also learning from them. So they have a new rural entrepreneur program that the minister updated me on yesterday, and we're going to monitor that to see how it works. If there's any lessons we can learn from that. They're very happy with the rural program and the lessons that they're learning there, and the new agri-food program. So a lot of successes. Finally, global skills strategy, but I'll talk about that later because I don't want to take too much of it.
My question is, when you say pilot programs, is this something that's going to be long-term or is it just temporary?
Well, for the Atlantic Immigration Program, it was meant to be a 3-year pilot program. This year I extended it by another 2 years. So now it's a 5-year pilot program. By the time it ends, we will study and analyze the data and see if there's a need to make it permanent. But already what I've seen makes me very happy in terms of the results and the retention and the number of people who've used it. The employers are happy with it, the provinces are happy with it. Nova Scotia has recorded its first population increase in decades.
Brilliant.
Last year, 1.9% increase as a result of the Atlantic Immigration Program. So far so good. I would guess, based on current trends, if current trends hold, I can easily see that program becoming a permanent program.
Right.
Same with the rural. So we'll see what happens. So that's on the, so these programs are mainly targeting the lower skilled and the intermediate skilled and the skilled trades folks. In addition to that, we've heard very loudly and clearly from provinces that there's a need for the Government of Canada to create more spots for permanent residency for a segment of the temporary foreign workers who've been here for a long time, who keep having a job, who are part of our communities, and who would like to continue living in Canada. So there is a commitment in my mandate letter as well as the Minister of Labour to work on that, and so we're going to deliver on that as well. Finally, global skills strategy, something that the Trudeau government delivered. It didn't exist before.
Correct.
This has been, I believe this should be celebrated much more. This program has delivered amazing results for Canada. And BC employers have used this program. Folks who are in very high-tech, high-growth industries like the animation industry here in Vancouver, they've used this program. And it has 3 different aspects, but one of them is to shorten the processing time and the requirements for highly skilled temporary labor to come and do some really interesting work with a company to grow Canadian jobs and then leave. And that kind of person, if you wanted to bring them before the global skills strategy, it would take you 7 months to do that. It now takes 10 days, 10 business days.
Wow.
So roughly 2 weeks. That's huge improvement, and employers are very happy because that's what they wanted. It also introduces work permit exemptions for researchers who are coming to do research. It also includes dedicated service teams of immigration officers who will stand up and help a company move to Canada and do all the immigration processing. So very good program. People are very happy with it. 44,000 highly skilled people have come to Canada through that program, and they have on average created about 10 jobs each. So we're talking about hundreds of thousands of jobs. Many employers have used it and like it 25% of that talent coming into Canada now at record numbers. 25% of them are Americans.
Right.
So we're getting talent from the United States. We're not losing talent to the US anymore. So overall, very good news. And again, the difference maker economically has been immigration, among other things. And I'm proud of that record. More needs to be done. I think we need to continue on that momentum, and which is why we're asking Canadians for a second mandate in October.
Okay. I am going to ask you a question just on the other side now. Obviously there is a high cost of living in Canada. When you talk about childcare, education, housing, so that's something new immigrants may be unprepared for.
Yeah.
So how are you going to communicate a realistic perception of immigrating to Canada without compromising a positive edge?
I think it means investing more in pre-arrival services. We made an announcement at the beginning of this year that we will put in an additional $113 million in pre-arrival services. These are services that enable people, to get a clear picture of what to expect in Canada, but also actually get them a head start on finding a job. So not to wait to get to Canada to get a job. And so one of the examples I used in that announcement is an automation engineer that we recruited from the Philippines by using our immigration system. And then he used our pre-arrival settlement services program to get a job in Canada 3 days before he landed in Canada. So we're doing more of that. We are connecting professional newcomers with the licensing bodies before they land in Canada, so they can start the licensing process there. We are testing out new innovative settlement programs to get people a head start on work, on language. And finally, we are incentivizing them to go beyond the big cities. Go to rural Canada, go to the mid-sized cities. And some of that is working. During the Harper years, 56% of all newcomers to Canada were landing in Ontario and mainly in the GTA. That number has now dropped to 35% because we're pushing more PMP and rural immigration.
Yeah.
And so the highest immigrant population growth in Canada, the top three places are now Regina, Saskatoon, and Winnipeg, not Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver.
Wow.
So it's having an impact. I think we just need to do more of that.
Right.
In terms of the cost of living, it's a very complex question because housing is a big cost.
Indeed.
But again, even there, we're doing a lot, $40 billion to address housing on all its facets. More investments in affordable housing, more affordable housing for seniors, social housing, more incentives for developers to create rental housing, low-cost rental units. So that's having an impact. And just to put it into context, so $40 billion investment, just put it into context. The NDP in the last election promised to invest $25 million in housing. So it's a whole different ballgame. We are delivering a huge amount of money to make sure that housing is addressed for Canadians. But it's also things like helping that first family with the first home by having the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation to buy a percentage of the home so that they can have a lower mortgage payment. It is giving a break to students who graduate and who have Canada student loans to not pay interest for a little while and not even ask them to pay payments until they start working. All these things save money. It's giving a little bit more to seniors, putting more money in the pockets of working families to help them raise their kids. And that, by the way, is delivered both to permanent residents as well as citizens. And the Canada Child Benefit is delivering more money to 9 out of 10 families. It's removed 300,000 kids out of poverty. Our economic policies have delivered the lowest poverty rate in Canadian history. 825,000 people are now out of poverty. There's the lowest unemployment you've ever heard. And BC, by the way, is leading in that regard. So what I'm trying to say is we've done a lot. We've progressed on a lot of these issues. Is there more that needs to be done? Absolutely. There are people who are still struggling, who are not included in the economy. We need to do more. But I think we have a good momentum. We just need to double down on this approach of investing in people, investing in communities, infrastructure. That's how you unlock jobs, because people then feel confident about the economy. We cut small business. You know, the Conservatives like to talk about small business. We're the ones who cut small business taxes from 11% to 9%. So the average small business has $7,500 more in their pocket. You know, so the record is there. I hope we can continue on this momentum. Now is not the time to go back, and to do that by asking Canadians to give us another mandate to continue the good work.
Great point. I have another question. Sort of in regards to with these programs, they can definitely help misconceptions that Canadians have, quote unquote, new immigrants and refugees are draining the system.
Yeah.
So what's the actual factual here?
Well, many studies have shown that newcomers, especially in the economic category, which is the majority of them, find work faster than Canadians. They earn more money. In the express entry system, for example, they earn higher wages than Canadians. They contribute, they start businesses, they take higher risks and are more entrepreneurial than Canadians. They use less benefits, they use less of the healthcare system and so on. So overall, a very good news story there. I think it's just a question of highlighting those contributions, and everyone makes a contribution. Even refugees, despite the perception, refugees bring a lot of skills, and they, yes, they may need some supports in the beginning, but eventually they catch up to other immigrants in terms of earning capacity and employment prospects and so on. And you know, if you look at the history of Canada, apart from our Indigenous brothers and sisters, it's basically immigrants who've come either in search of safety from persecution or in search of a better life, who have then been helped by the people who are here, who then succeeded and then helped other newcomers.
Helping give back, yeah.
Yes, so that has been the tradition. And it's worked so well for us, and it's made us such an amazing country. Can you imagine if we didn't have the arrivals of Sikhs or Chinese nationals or Japanese to British Columbia? How would British Columbia look like today? You know, all these immigrants and newcomers and their descendants who've made British Columbia what it is today.
Definitely.
So I think that it's important to remind ourselves of that amazing history of welcome and generosity, and then those people turning around and giving back, right?
Correct.
The folks who are coming in now will do the same thing. They may speak a different language, they may look different from me and you, but they have the same drive and ambition to succeed. So we have to welcome them, and again, we cannot succumb to the politics of fear and division that is being practiced by the Conservatives, because that's not what Canada is about.
Correct.
Yeah.
Without taking too much of your time, I do want to touch on a subject that is, I think, of importance to the South Asian community. In the last few days, there's been headlines about students you know, their student visas, and a lot of them, unfortunately, are quite young and naive, and they've got the dreams and ambition to come to Canada for a better life. And unfortunately, with making contact in some institutions and colleges, they are, you know, there is reports of fraud, and then, you know, given sort of false dreams and hope of when they come to Canada, and, you know, especially a lot of them wanting to work here. So what kind of recourse is there available for, you know, any of this fraud that's going on?
First of all, I think that the contributions that international students together make to Canadian society is invaluable. They really contribute to our economy. $21.5 billion into our GDP. They add to the classroom experience. Some of them end up working after they graduate, and they fill a need in our labor market, and we welcome them. But it's also important for them to follow the rules. And if you're coming to Canada to study, that we expect you to study. If you're objective is to work full-time and not study, then you should apply for a work permit. You shouldn't use a student permit to work full-time. That's not what we expect you to do. On the issue of exploitation, there is an issue in the community and in larger Canadian society of unauthorized immigration consultants misleading people.
Correct.
And that's not just limited to student permits. It includes, temporary resident visas, work permits, and so on, and permanent immigration.
Right.
Unauthorized immigration consultants have been a real issue in the community. Various governments before us tried to fix this issue, and they failed because they didn't have the right approach. We took the time. People were saying, why are you not doing this? Why are you not doing this quickly? We said, we're going to take the time to get it right. And I believe finally that we've gotten it right. And we've come down with a strategy that includes a number of things. First, an investment of $52 million to shore up the various agencies that are responsible for tackling this issue. So more money to Canada Border Services Agency, CBSA, to conduct complex investigations, go after these unauthorized consultants and take action. Second, we have doubled the amount of the criminal fines from 100,000 to 200,000 for anyone caught practicing immigration consulting in an unauthorized manner. Okay, so it's very serious penalty. We're also introducing something that didn't exist before, an administrative monetary penalty on top of the criminal fine, which is also a lot of money. In addition to that, for the first time in Canadian history, we will set up a compensation fund for people who have been swindled out of money.
Wow.
So now they will have access to a compensation fund which will make them whole again. We will set up a brand new college of immigration and citizenship consultants. The majority of the board of directors of that new college will be government representatives, appointed by the government,
Wow.
Appointed by the government. They will be public interest directors who will look out for the best interests of the public and not the members of the college. There will be new training, new educational requirements. There will be a much stronger and robust disciplinary process, a new complaints process. Under the new rules, if the college suspects an immigration consultant of wrongdoing, they are authorized to enter the premises, the offices of these people, and seize documents. They can compel those people to come in front of the board when there's a complaint. And finally, the college will require every member of the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants to carry liability insurance, just like lawyers. So that again, if there's wrongdoing or malpractice, the insurance will also cover those issues. So this is a comprehensive strategy. Oh, finally, and most importantly, the 52 million, part of it will be used to send immigration officers from the Government of Canada to some of our key markets, key visa offices like the ones in India, China, parts of Africa, and so on, to educate foreign nationals on our system and who to use for immigration consulting.
Great.
The new college will have the power and the tools to go to court and obtain an injunction against unauthorized immigration consultants. They'll have a list, a name and shame list. So the days of unauthorized immigration consultants taking advantage of Canadians and foreign nationals are over.
Great.
We're taking action, and I believe this strategy will really help a lot of people.
Brilliant.
Those who may be vulnerable in the future potentially will be helped because we can prevent that, and those who have already been taken advantage of can go after these people now, and we will have real deterrence. $200,000 fine is not a joke, plus the administrative monetary penalties, plus the new tools that we're giving to the new college. And I've made it very clear that if the new board does not do its job with the new college, there will be an administrator appointed by the government to take over the whole entire operation. We will have a civil servant sitting there observing the mechanisms of the board. We will transition the existing body to become the college. If they can't do the job, we'll start from scratch. So this is, I believe, if you look at most of the recommendations that came out of the Citizenship and Immigration Committee of Parliament have been adopted by our government in Bill C-97. So it's a new day, and I want to assure everyone that there's no more free ride for these unauthorized consultants, and they'll pay a big price. The only way to practice immigration consulting moving forward will be to become a member of good standing with the new college. And by the way, even within the new college, it'll be a tiered licensing process.
Wow.
So it won't be like you get licensed and then you can do whatever you want.
This is great news. Thank you so much. So in closing, what message do you have for our viewers that tuned in nationwide today?
First of all, I want to thank you for reporting the news, but also really for updating the community on what the government is doing on a host number of issues, but especially on immigration. The second thing I want to leave you with, and through you to your viewers and listeners, is that immigration has been very good to Canada. And it continues to be something that we're using very well today, but also it's key to our economic future. We are an aging society that needs, with a growing economy and growing labor market needs. So we need immigrants to play part. It's not the only solution, but immigration is one of the solutions we need moving forward.
Correct. I
want to end by saying we have to fight back against the fear-mongering and all that, against immigration. It's okay to have a debate on immigration, but that debate has to be based on facts. And the fear-mongering and the myths around these issues, even around refugees, is not really going to help us in that sense. And so what I always say is, let's fight the fear-mongering with facts. The best way to fight against the fear is facts. When you have the facts, when you know the retirement, worker to retiree ratio in Canada, when you know what our population will be like in 16 years, when you understand the pressures facing rural Canada, for example, even growing economies in places like the Greater Vancouver area, then you realize that one of the key engines of our economic growth is the talent through immigration that's coming to places like the Lower Mainland. We can't afford to lose that momentum and that welcoming nature, because it will hurt us. It will hurt us economically, and it's not part of who we are. We've always been a compassionate country that has welcomed both economic immigrants, family class immigrants, but also refugees. Refugees are part of who we are in terms of our humanitarian tradition. Imagine if we make the same mistakes now that we've made way back when we turned away the refugees in the Komagatu Maru, or the refugees in the St. Louis during the Second World War. We've had to apologize for those mistakes the moment we've moved away from our humanitarian instincts. So we have to maintain that, because that's part of who we are. And make no mistake about it, I can give you many, many examples of refugees who've come here, who have in turn been thankful for their adopted country, who are proud Canadians, but who have also contributed so much to Canada and continue to contribute to Canada every single day. So I want to leave you with that, because I think that we're not, as Canadians, immune to the anti-immigration rhetoric coming from outside, but we have to hold firm and we have to continue being a welcoming country.
Great. We know Canada values compassion, equality, and safety, and we respect your leadership because you also, in return, respect those principles. So thank you very much, and we look forward to having you back with more updates in the near future.
Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you.
I hope you all enjoyed today's special programming. We promise you that we will have more updates in regards to the immigration news that you've heard today. And again, we'd like to thank you for all tuning in. If you have watched us on Facebook, make sure you do subscribe to our page and share this so we can help get the word out. Thank you again for tuning in on Channel Punjabi live from Surrey.
ਸਾਡਾ ਹਰ ਇੱਕ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਵੇਖਣ ਤੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜਨ ਲਈ ਸਬਸਕ੍ਰਾਈਬ ਕਰੋ ਚੈਨਲ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਤੇ ਨੋਟੀਫਿਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਲਈ ਬੈਲ ਆਈਕਨ ਵਾਲੇ ਬਟਨ ਤੇ ਕਲਿੱਕ ਕਰੋ।